I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it. Okay. Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
We've got news.
Got news.
About my Cleveland Browns. We've got an oblique problem. Obliques are big deals, especially when it's your quarterback. Now, he might be fourth on the depth chart, but he was number one in the preseason game last week, and he did a great job. 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shedeur Sanders has an oblique injury. That is not good. I do not like this. I hate this because I want to see more reps for Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, a projected breakout this season, has been sidelined unexpectedly. The Browns coaching staff confirmed an oblique injury significant enough to keep him out of all activity. No reps, no drills, no warm-ups. Concerns are rising about how this may affect his momentum and force adjustments to the team's plan. The focus now is his recovery timeline, the impact on his development, and the next steps for the quarterback depth chart.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders injured his oblique during practice today, putting his status in doubt for Saturday's preseason game against the Eagles. He's the latest quarterback on Cleveland's roster who has dealt with a health issue, joining fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Sanders, who is trying to fight his way up the Browns depth chart, started the preseason opener last week and threw to practice. So how concerning is this for Shedeur as he is trying to, again, make his way up the depth chart, be QB2, potentially QB1 in the future?
Dillon Gabriel taking Shedeur Sanders' QB1 spot after Sanders suffers an oblique injury is more than a roster change. It signals the staff is choosing urgency over efficiency. You do not replace a quarterback operating near a 70% completion rate with one coming off a 32% outing unless the decision is driven by desperation or poor evaluation. That is not strategy, it is avoidable loss of production. The impact on accuracy, timing, and drive sustainability is clear, and the difference is apparent to anyone watching.
Well, here's what we know. I mean, after practice, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, was not available to the media, but I did talk to him on the field as the players were coming off, and he told me that Shedeur Sanders complained of oblique soreness during the warm-ups this morning.
Shedeur Sanders' absence isn't just a gap in the lineup, it's a setback for the entire offense. He thrives under pressure and makes throws others won't attempt. When he's healthy, every pass has intent, every drive has rhythm, and opposing defenses know they're in for a long day. Replace him with Dillon Gabriel and the defense senses an opening. Corners press tighter, safeties cheat down, and linebackers blitz more aggressively because they don't expect the same timing, velocity, or accuracy.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm not even going to try to hide it. Rich gets
You guys are fans. Like, you guys talk about the Cleveland Browns quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's almost annoying to me.
It aggravates people. Like, people don't like the fact that Rich talks a lot
They
about
must love
Shedeur.
I'm here.
But it's like, you have a friend, and that friend's child is following in the family's footsteps. You want them to do well. I don't know why people have such an issue. I know Rich is supposed to be impartial, but it's kind of hard when you have that type of tie to it. But yeah, I'm rooting for Shedeur, man. And
Dillon Gabriel's 32% completion rate isn't just poor, it's untenable at this level. A number that low needs no context. It means 2 misses for every completion. Weather, opponent, and play calls are secondary when efficiency is that limited. That output does not sustain drives or keep the full playbook viable, yet he is starting while Shedeur Sanders is sidelined. The contrast is clear. Sanders brings accuracy, timing, and command. Gabriel's recent performance reflects inconsistency and missed opportunities. Choosing Gabriel under these circumstances reduces offensive reliability and invites defensive pressure. It is a decision that sacrifices efficiency and field position.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dillon Gabriel, but to the Shedeur Sanders point, it is unfortunate because I thought he was gaining some momentum. I know the practice that they had before they left for Philly, Daniel Oyefusi reported that he actually took the most reps of all of the quarterbacks. And that was the first time that had happened. It was the first time that he had went ahead of Dillon Gabriel, practicing with the twos, etc. So like coming off that stout performance against the Carolina Panthers, he was gaining momentum.
If this were a clean evaluation, there would be no debate. Shedeur Sanders is the clear choice. He's accurate, composed, and consistent with a track record of high-level production. Dillon Gabriel remains a question mark, and not the kind that stresses defense. He's the kind that makes coaches consider leaning on the run to limit risk and protect field position. The reality is that injuries create openings for players who haven't earned them. Gabriel has stepped into QB1 while Sanders is out, but that reflects circumstance, not superiority.
We don't know the severity of this oblique injury and whether it will even keep him out of Saturday's game against the Eagles. As for moving up the depth chart, I'm the Browns preseason sideline reporter. I was there Friday night when he burst onto the stage and set the NFL world buzzing. And yes, his demeanor was tremendous. His poise was tremendous. He did the things that were asked of him. But at the end of the day, he wasn't actually asked to do all that much.
The real concern is how this could attach to Shedeur Sanders' reputation. The NFL is unforgiving about availability. An oblique injury for a quarterback isn't minor. It affects mechanics, torque, and timing. Even with a strong return, the injury-prone label can linger. For the Cleveland Browns, or any team seeking stability under center, that perception is toxic. Teams don't want a player they fear won't make it through October. That's the risk. Talent doesn't always overcome league politics. Once questions about durability start, they rarely fade. They surface in contract terms, roster decisions, and sideline evaluations.
So Shedeur Sanders is injured again? If you were following along on social media today for the Browns' first joint practice in Philadelphia against the Eagles, wow, you were in for a tumultuous ride. I mean, all the reporters, both Browns and Eagles reporters, were pretty much flabbergasted at the fact that Shedeur Sanders was taking 0 team reps during the day, and even Tyler Huntley was getting team reps instead of Shedeur. And then it came out, obviously, everybody's speculating. There's people calling for Kevin's jobs, and before I go any further, I don't blame anybody. Ever.
Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's numbers should be sidelining him, not elevating him. A 32% completion rate isn't a dip, it's a warning sign that points to issues with field vision, timing, and receiver cohesion. That's the quarterback taking snaps while Shedeur Sanders is out. Put their work side by side and the gap is obvious. Sanders shows consistent placement, timing, and footwork that reflect high-level execution. Gabriel's recent output introduces variability that shrinks the call sheet and stalls drives. You can't claim the priority is winning while starting a quarterback who isn't reliably delivering routine completions. Fans recognize it, receivers lose confidence and tempo when targets are off, the offensive line's urgency fades when protection doesn't translate into productive throws, team belief in the quarterback is fragile, and once it erodes, a season can come apart quickly.
We could be looking at, 3/4 of Snoop and maybe 1/4 of Dillon Gabriel. Not really exciting for the fans. Of course, it would be nice to see what Dillon looks like. Did spend third-round capital on him.
If you're Dillon Gabriel and you're a rookie,
is not going to be
you want
on
to
this
get
team.
healed. You want the reps. You want to take these reps. So what do you do to prepare yourself and get ready? Because, man, when rookies get injured, it's like these reps are so valuable.
Yeah, sets them back a lot. We do have some video here. Mike Garafolo had some video of Jalen Hurts kind of helping Shedeur use his cart to get off the field here.
Shedeur Sanders changes the entire equation. His presence under center keeps defenses honest, keeps teammates engaged, and expands the coaching staff's options. You can call vertical shots, open the playbook, and control the game's tempo. Dillon Gabriel limits that. With him, the playbook narrows, drives stall, and the defense ends up on the field too long trying to compensate. The Cleveland Browns are not in a position to gamble at quarterback. This is a franchise with a difficult history at the position. With Gabriel, the issues are visible from the stands. A 32% completion rate won't jump to 60% with a few extra reps. If anything, it will decline as defenses present looks they would not risk against Shedeur. And that's the core issue. Shedeur Sanders at 80% is still a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel at his best. That isn't exaggeration, it's the numbers. If Sanders is a 70% passer when healthy, even a drop to 60% keeps him well ahead of where Gabriel is now. Yet the team is rolling with the quarterback who isn't delivering routine completions. Every week Sanders is out, his hold on QB1 loosens. That's the hard truth. The longer Gabriel stays in the role, the more coaches cite continuity and chemistry to cover what's happening on the field. Every throw and every drive has to be a statement, not just to win, but to erase any notion that Gabriel is a legitimate alternative. In the NFL, QB1 isn't handed back because you used to be the best option. You have to take it.
Started off with some positive news for Shedeur, and then it kind of just went left real quick. Shedeur got the news early on that if Dillon Gabriel couldn't go, he would get his second straight start in the Saturday preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and then he went on to injure his oblique. For the fans who don't know exactly what part of the body the oblique is at, what that injury is, and how it can impact the quarterback, can you explain to them what is an oblique injury?
It's like up in this area, right? Well, you can't see me, but like right up in here, when you go to throw, like obviously that's all that. So
the truth is straightforward. The Cleveland Browns, or any team in this situation, aren't going anywhere meaningful with Dillon Gabriel under center. You can frame it as progress and point to selective highlights, but reality will level it out, and by then the season is already slipping. Shedeur Sanders is the difference between a team with a path forward and a team playing out the schedule. He reads coverages, delivers on-time throws, and forces defenses to respect every level of the field. Gabriel turns the offense into guesswork. The NFL is built on results, and the results are clear. Gabriel's 32% completion rate functions as a warning sign. It doesn't need context, a clinic, or a film session to explain. It signals inefficiency that stalls drives and compresses the playbook. Yet he has been handed the role Shedeur established through precision, composure, and production. That decision undercuts the stated goal of winning. With Sanders, the offense retains structure, rhythm, and threat. With Gabriel, it narrows and exposes the defense to longer stretches on the field. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a fifth-round pick, as unprepared to start, and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear. The most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles, processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. And practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that. And the more that the players see it, they're going to, then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dylan Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dylan always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a third-round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam struggled strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelsey's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.